Greetings and salutations. This is Miko bringing to you an audio version, the spoken word, of my weekly column on Macedonian matters. The English version is published on medium.com, and the Macedonian version is published on Svest.mk. This week's column, which is published on Sunday, November 18, 2018, is titled Of Old Testament Prophets and the Perversion of Language. The Old Testament prophet Isaiah wrote more than 2,700 years ago in Isaiah 5:20, "Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter." More recently, modern-day Russian prophet Alexander Solzhenitsyn, writing in Warning to the West in the 1970s, wrote, quote, "Among progressive people it is considered rather awkward to use seriously such words as good and evil. Communism has managed to persuade all of us that these concepts are old-fashioned and laughable. But if we are to be deprived of the concepts of good and evil, what will be left? Nothing but the manipulation of one another. We will sink to the status of animals." Unquote. It's not just communism doing the manipulation. Many of the modern-day equivalents of the communists that Solzhenitsyn was writing about then are in the European Union today, and other institutions where global governance types live and work. The high priests and priestesses of global governance who change the very meaning of the words thrive in such institutions. Just the other week, the Chief of Cabinet of EU Commissioner Johannes Hahn, Michael Karnitsching, tweeted his glowing approval for those Macedonian members of parliament, formerly with the center-right Svest.mk, who voted to change Macedonia's name, identity, constitution, history, heritage, culture, and much more. He tweeted, along with a picture of Johannes Hahn and EPP friends from Skopje, "They are true European heroes of democracy who voted for what they believe in the face of serious threats. Those who try to intimidate them should think hard where their political roads take them. #EU path." Unquote. Hahn tweeted a similar thought and a picture stating, quote, "Great meeting Macedonian colleagues at EPP summit. I applaud their courage and bravery in voting for the Prespa agreement. All threats against them must stop. All parties should work for the EU agenda, which the vast majority of citizens want." Unquote. This is nothing less than the perversion of language that Isaiah and Solzhenitsyn warned about. English author and social critic Os Guinness examines this in his latest book, Last Call for Liberty, when he writes about political correctness and notes how it is, quote, "the natural expression of post-truth politics, where everything is reduced to power, and controlling language is made the key to mastery or cultural hegemony." Unquote. He continues writing that this is an attempt to, quote, "exert its power and advance its cause by using language to prioritize the interests of the movement over reality itself. As it develops, political correctness becomes party-line thinking that both closes down other ways of thinking and dictates how people should think and express themselves." Unquote. This is exactly what the EU is doing today. Author George Orwell wrote that, quote, "all revolutions start with control of language." Here's a real-life example of the perversion of language and the attempt to dictate how people should think and express themselves. Last week, and according to the Macedonian Information Agency, Bulgarian Foreign Minister handed over 30 pages of remarks about the history books from Macedonian schools from the 6th and the 7th grades only. You can imagine the remarks the Bulgarians will hand over on all of the other textbooks in all of the other grades. The reason for this handover is that, according to the, quote, so-called Good Neighborly Relations Treaty, signed last year by Bulgaria and Macedonia, a joint commission has been established to look at the schoolbooks and other materials. The commission has already met twice and will meet a third time by the end of November as they continue to, quote-unquote, suggest changes to Macedonian schoolbooks. The foreign minister also noted that members of the Bulgarian commission found, quote, serious problems, unquote, with the Macedonian schoolbooks, and that, quote, that expectations of the commission's work are very high, and that Bulgarian officials remain determined after comprehensive consultations with the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences and the Faculty of History at Sofia University, unquote. Now, just as this process will continue with Bulgaria challenging the history books, the school books, maps, atlases, and teaching guides of Macedonia and Macedonian schools, so are the Greeks. They're doing so right now. Will the government of Zoran Zaev give in to every one of their demands to change history and history books? I think you know the answer. It is one thing to call a group of MPs, quote, true European heroes of democracy, unquote, when in fact, and in truth, the majority of Macedonian citizens see them as something else. These renegade MPs, who at one point pledged to uphold the Macedonian name, language, identity, constitution, history, culture, heritage, and much else, have now voted to change all that. They will have to face their families, friends, neighbors, and the Macedonian people for the rest of their lives and live with their decisions, which hopefully one day can be undone. But it's far worse to call Ali Ahmeti, Talat Jafari, and all of the leadership of the NLA, most of who became members of the political party DUI, good, when in fact they are indeed evil. That is a true perversion of language and justice and all that is right and good, and that is a real-life example of calling good evil and evil good. Ahmeti, Jafari, and their colleagues in the NLA, now DUI, are guilty of murder and many other crimes. And yet not only do they go free, but they are lauded and feted as good and responsible people. This is the state of the West today, and when people call good evil and evil good, it will not end well. Thanks for listening.